name's Darren and welcome to my workshop. Today I'd like to talk to you about ultimate router tables. In my opinion, there is no such thing as an ultimate router table. Everyone has different needs. You might have a different amount of space available, a different budget, or perhaps just different needs from the router table itself. But I've built what I'm calling my penultimate router table. It's pretty darn good. It certainly meets all of my needs. So let's take a look. This is my current router table, and I've got to be honest, it's been really good. I designed it to, pretty much do exactly what I wanted. So upgrading from it has taken me a long time to get around to because there hasn't really been a need. But now it's starting to age a little bit, and the plastic insert for the router table has started to bow over the years. So perhaps it's time to replace that. And I thought while I'm replacing that, there's a few other things I'd like to change. It's been a really good table. The Incra system I originally put on there for doing things like box joints and dovetails. And so it's got the original Incra racks in it, which means it's actually imperial, not metric. So I want to change that over. But also I want more depth of cut from the router bit back to the fence. So I'm going to make the table longer and put on a longer Incra jig, which I used to have on my old table saw. So I've kept that aside when I bought the new table saw, and so I'm going to put that on the new bench, new router table. So I'll have more depth of cut that way, more in-feed and out-feed support going that way because it'll be the width of the Craig router tabletop. Something else I want is built-in dust extraction, which I sort of did with this one. So underneath the router bay you can see I've got my vacuum cleaner shelf effectively. That's been very handy, but I would like something again enclosed would be nice, but again a vacuum cleaner needs airflow. I probably won't stick with that same vacuum cleaner. It hasn't got great capacity, it's years old, and I could do something that's got a tad more suction. So yeah, I'll probably end up sticking a different vacuum in the system. These drawers on the front have proven to be very handy. I don't think I need more drawer space than this. This seems to have been enough. There you go, you can see I've got my little Ryobi router and my DeWalt under there. And the Incra guidebook and stuff like that, a couple of router spanners. So yeah, I'm going to need somewhere to put those sorts of things on the new table as well. So it just basically needs to be a bigger version of this. Doesn't need a lot of extra storage, but it just needs more room for a vacuum. And so here's the new table in pretty much its final resting place. Obviously when it's not being used, I'll tuck the carriage inside and push it back against the wall. That's the way it's meant to work. But okay, let's go over the features of the new table. A metric Incra fence that'll allow me to make both metric box joints, dovetail joints, but also nice measurements for just cutting, just general work, dados and such. I've got a big 50 centimetre cutting depth from the centre of the collet to the fence. Let's see if I can zoom in and show you that. There we go. There you go, you can see 50 centimetres to the centre of the collet, which is nearly 20 inches, more than 19 inches. I've got the same fence before, but now I've got a different adapter for the extraction hose. And the great thing about this fence, of course, is if we've got the extra guide for stopping wood from tipping when you're putting things through along against the fence. But also it still allows for the use of things like Incra end stops and this carriage for guiding the wood past the router bit when making box joints, finger joints, dovetail joints and so on. One of the reasons I wanted a Craig tabletop was because it had the mitre slot here. So I can pop in my Incra mitre gauge, which has incremental stops at various different angles, certainly at all the 10 points and quite a few of the 5s.
And so I could cut something like trim the edge of something at 45 degrees or, well, any angle if I wanted to. I didn't go with a router lift in the tabletop like the Craig router lift. Instead, I got a Triton router with a router lift built in, drilled a little hole in the plate here which lines up with the router, and the router also comes with this little lifty device. So I can just do this. Underneath I've got a magnetic interlock switch. What that means is if the power to the whole table is knocked off for some reason, if I was to trip a circuit breaker, turn the power off at the wall, if the mains power was to go off because of a mains electrical failure for any sort, when the power came back on, this wouldn't automatically run, it would stay off because the electromagnet had turned off and the switch had turned off. And I can show you that here, because if you see the light down there is on, and if I go up to the power point up here and turn that off, you can see it stays off when I turn it back on again. And now when I turn this switch on, that light comes back on again. So yeah, just a little safety feature. So I've got that switch feeding a power board, which in turn feeds the router, and follow that hose through and down into that cupboard, the dust extraction system. I'll show you that in just a sec. But just back up here for a second. You can see I've used those clips I was telling you about in one of the previous videos to keep all the wires neatly organised. Also underneath we have a few storage things, like we've got a hanger for the router spanner, and over the other side here we've got a storage area for the two end stops that go on the fence. They just hook in there, and just here I've got a little place to store the winder for winding the router up and down from above the table like you saw before. So that just slides in there ready to be used. Nice, quick, easy to reach. And also I forgot to mention I've got that light there, but it also doubles up as a light so I can see what I'm doing underneath the table. I've printed up drawer and door handles with wording on them to tell you what's in the drawer. Now originally I had accessories on the one for here, but it was too small and you couldn't read it. So I've had to come up with another word. I've gone with guides because I'll keep guidebooks and stuff in there. And the next drawer down, if I can get it to tilt, there we go, is where the router bits are going to go, and I'll show you that once they're in there. And under here, you probably can't read the door handle from there, but that says dust, and that's because that's where the dust extraction is. So there's one dust extractor at the back, at the front, which is a vacuum cleaner, and then I've got a collection bucket, a similar idea to a cyclone, but it's not technically a cyclone, it's just a dust separator. So that should stop the vacuum filling up too quickly. I've got ventilation in the side here. There's also a couple of vents at the back, so it'll allow air to flow through, hopefully enough. If not, I might have to draw a hole in my lovely door. I don't want to do that. And over the other side here, we've got a slide out drawer, which says on it, routers, because there are routers in it. And this is my drawer for storing things like routers and such, which does have a couple of routers in it, and hasn't been organised yet. I've literally only just finished building this. So there we go, that will have, of course, two routers in it, some other router bits and pieces, spanners, templates, lettering templates and so on. Now I've painted the sides of the drawers red, partly because the insides of the drawers are red, and they're red because the handles are red, and my router bit storage trays are red, which will be going in the next drawer down. So that's why I've painted that red. But also having a red side means if I leave the drawer open a little bit, I'll know that it's open and I won't accidentally bump into it. Router bit storage drawer that stores all of my router bits and still has room for expansion. and cord winders for when the unit isn't plugged into the wall, so I can wind the cord up. Handy if it's being moved too, so you don't run over the cable. Didn't have that on the last one. I've got 6 wheels all up, but in the corners I've got these locking casters. They work quite well. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the router table video. You've now seen all its different features and functions. Quickly, obviously I could go into a lot of detail about the Incra router and fence system, but there are other videos on that out there, especially from Incra, and this is an old system, so the chances of you buying this one now are pretty slim. I've recycled this from an old table saw. Like I said, this used to be my table saw fence back in the day, before my new table saw. So now it's a router fence like it's meant to be. It's been a good project and I've ended up with exactly what I want. So if you want something tailor-made to your needs, I would thoroughly recommend building your own router table. But it has turned out to be an expensive project as well. So if you're happy with an off-the-shelf router table, so to speak, something like a Krieg table with the steel fence with just a Krieg top on it, and if you're not worried about doing things like the dovetails and the box joints on it, you're going to save a lot of money. This ended up costing more than $500 to build, especially seeing the router on my old router table died partway through the making of this, so I had to buy a new one. But you know, swings and roundabouts, the old one didn't have the winder available through the top, so now I have a router lift, which is a big bonus. So that's it, that brings me to the end. I will be making a making of the router table video that'll be coming up shortly. I was going to do this as part of that, but then the whole thing would be too long. So in the next video we'll just rush straight into the making of it. We won't have a big introduction. Okay, so that's pretty much it from me. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye bye.